So there's a very infamous tiff that you had with the former Chief Justice of India, Justice Vikas Chandrachud. What would you like to say about that? And many other such instances have also been reported in the past in the public domain. Your thoughts on that matter?
Well, what happened with Justice Chandrachud has an interesting background. Before he became the Chief Justice of India, I remember there was one lawyer who was relentlessly writing to the President of India and to the Prime Minister that Justice Chandrachud should not be elevated as CJI, alleging certain misdemeanors on the behalf of his son appearing in matters where he had decided, etc. So I was the president of the bar then, and I made my inquiries, and I found out that particular person who was making all these scandalous allegations was in fact somebody without any credibility. And even the information that he was wanting to allege against Justice Chandrachud was not factually not correct. I talked to members of the bar in the Bombay High Court. I checked up with judges who had dealt with that matter. And I realized that what he is doing is not correct. And as an institution, which is the Supreme Court Bar Association, we discussed it in our executive committee and we decided to pass a resolution condemning such behavior. Immediately that very evening, Justice Chandrachud rang me up. He didn't know my number. We had never talked on phone before, although we knew each other from before. But he rang me up and he thanked me because I'm so glad you passed this resolution. I said, Dhananjay, I have not done you a favor. I have done it for the institution and I have done my homework. And I realized that what this fellow is doing is not correct. So our relationship started on this background. When he became the Chief Justice of India, that issue about our lawyers' chambers was pending. And Justice Lalit had asked us to file a petition because only 2/3 of that land is still lying vacant unfortunately on the ring road, was earmarked for the lawyers' chambers and 1/3 was earmarked for the Supreme Court registry. If I remember correctly, it was for the archives. So I told Justice Lalit that having an archive on the ring road so far away from the Supreme Court really will not make sense. And as it is, there is a huge paucity of chambers for lawyers. So why don't we have the entire building for chambers? And he said since the government order itself says that it should be 60, 66 and 33, we really can't change it on our own. So he said, it's better if the SCBA files a petition. On the judicial side, it may be possible to look into it. So accordingly, the SCBA filed a petition and a large number of issues were taken in that petition, including that declaring the Soul Bhagwan Das Road as a justice road or make it a part of the Supreme Court campus, because Supreme Court's needs were growing in leaps and bounds and we didn't have any additional contiguous additional space to grow. Justice Lalit issued notice in the petition also, and after notice it was pending hearing before Justice Chandrachud when he became the Chief Justice of India. So purely to get this expedited, I used to mention this matter, and what he used to do deliberately, he used to list the matter but not take it up. So I think if I'm not mistaken, it happened that 4 or 5 times it got listed and not taken up. He used to keep hearing other matters and not take up other matters. When I used to mention, he used to say yes, yes and not list the matter. So if I remember correctly, there were 8 or 10 times that I mentioned for listing, he refused to list it. And when it actually got listed, it was not taken up. My tenure was expiring. I was finishing my consecutive 2 years and accordingly I had to give a break. And I knew that if I didn't escalate this issue before I finished my tenure, Chandrachud will do something about this land which it was not meant for. In fact, one of the very senior judge told me that he has some other plans for that land. And that is why probably he was shirking in hearing this matter. So in that particular mentioning, I again went to his court and I said this matter has not been listed in spite of so many mentionings, and wherever it has got listed, it has not been taken up. So kindly hear it as item number 1, whichever it you feel. And when I was mentioning this, he again, brushed it aside. Now that really, I felt that if I don't do something now, this matter will go the way he wants this land to be utilized for something else. So I said, if you don't permit this mentioning in court now, I'll have to come to your residence and do this and do a dharna outside your residence as a leader of the bar. That really, escalated into his using, bad-mouthing me by saying that I'll you should get out, etc. and all that, and not argue. Now, there was no provocation for him to say whatever he said. If I also wanted, I could have reacted the same way and said something which was not expected of a bar leader. But I kept my restraint. I didn't react to what he said, and I quietly walked out of court. Of course, what happened later is even more pathetic. Kapil Sibal and, if I remember correctly, Neeraj Kaul, they both stood up and started saying what is happening, etc. In this court, and trying to say something as if I've done some great wrong. Anyway, so when I went out, the bar was completely very, very upset, and they felt that this is something which can't be allowed to go like this. It's an insult to the leader of the bar. So we decided to call a general body. The general body had two resolutions. One was for the hearing of our matter to be expedited, and second was, of course, to condemn the actions of Kapil Sibal and Neeraj Kaul for having, unnecessary made comments against me without even knowing the issue and without even understanding what happened in court. The moment this general body was called and this was flashed all over, of course, I started getting letters from from Mr. Venugopal. He was then the Attorney General. He said, Vikas, please don't call this general body. And ultimately, it is for the betterment of the bar that we have to, we have to look at the larger picture, and we don't want to show to the world that the bar is divided. But fortunately for me, Justice Chandrachud decided to list the matter also before a special bench. So obviously, in deference to the wishes of Mr. Venugopal, I decided to call up the general body, and the matter was ultimately listed. And for the first time, because of this effort of mine, a judgment was delivered where the Attorney General conceded that such matters can be decided by the Supreme Court on the administrative side, and in every development that takes place, infrastructural development that takes place in the Supreme Court, the bar has always to be consulted. Now, that is a decision which came for the first time in the history of the Supreme Court, because so far, whenever any infrastructure development had happened in the Supreme Court, the bar was never consulted. In fact, the result was that judges have created facilities for themselves or in the institution. Correspondingly, no facilities have been created for the bar. So that was something which was one of the issues which I had flagged in the call for the general body. And lo and behold, after delivering that judgment, still he went on and built that museum by spending 36 crore without any tender and without consulting the bar, which of course is a separate story altogether. But that's how he behaved. That was his nature. He never used to consult even other judges, which I came to know during my tenure itself, that he was a one-man court. He decided everything alone, as if he was the master of everything in Supreme Court. And this is something which I felt was, not correct for the institution, because judges, chief justices before him, chief justices after him have always built the concept of collegiality, of discussing with the other judges. Even though it may be a decision of the Chief Justice of India, it has to be in consultation with the senior judges. That is how the institution functions or should function. But during that period, as far as the bar is concerned, I think his behavior was very, very improper. And I did what I felt was right to be done. And it escalated as if, I have some issue with Justice Chandrachud. Similarly, sometimes, there have also been instances where judges have misbehaved with the bar, and I have always stood up against such misbehavior, because ultimately we don't come to practice in this court at the cost of our self-respect. We give you respect, we call you my lords, and we expect at least to be treated like normal people, not to be treated as if we are someone to be treated roughly or misbehave with. So I think these are very important issues which every bar leader should have in mind. If they decide to contest for a bar position, and if they feel that they are being true to their office, they must take a stand when it comes to taking up issues for the general bar.